Peace to the planet. It's your man Regal, coming at you with another edition of Regal Rants. March 21st, 2026. Today's my birthday. Happy birthday to me. Yeah, feeling real good. It's my 48 trip around the sun. You know what I'm talking about? Feeling good as ever. Looking good as ever. You know what I'm saying? Gonna get out here in traffic in a little bit. But I decided to spend a little time with the good people on my birthday. Get y'all some content going today. I'm trying to hit y'all with a few videos today, as a matter of fact. This I do what we call ancestral acknowledgement. So I'm gonna share my ancestral ritual with the good people today. Alright? Y'all give me just a second, I'll be right back. Yes, ancestral worship. This is where we pay homage to those that came before us. So we light the path. We light the path. And then we pour libations to all those who came before us, all those who made this day possible. We love you. We will never forget you. You live on forever through the memories you create. Thank you for life. Thank you for loving me. Till we meet again.
Let's go.
This first one, let me say this. Let's start out by saying this. Got a lot of content creators, man, who indulge in what we call popular culture. And a lot of their content consists of like celebrity news, may get into politics, but it's heavily saturated with celebrity news. Who's dating who, who's cheating on who, baby mama this, that, you know, this, that, and the third. What I want to say is, on my space, man, you know, I want to steer clear of the madness, right? I want to use this space as an instrument to bring forth positive change in the community. But it really depends on the mental capacity of the community. You know what I mean? I won't be an algorithm whore. I will pay attention to what's popular. And from time to time, we might indulge in such topics. But that's not going to be my primary focus. Okay? With my space, with my time, my energy, I want to do things like raise the collective consciousness of the community, right? Those that know me know I'm a teacher. I've taught a little bit. I've taught quite a few students in the school system. So I've got that background. And from my personal experience, we've always had issues with the reading levels and the black community. So with my time and my effort and my energy, you know, that's one of the things I want to tackle in the community, right? Now, in order to raise the consciousness of the community, we're going to have to promote reading. We're going to have to promote reading. So I'm going to introduce a few books to you today that I think all members of the community should at least be aware of. Crack these books open, man, and get something from them. You know what I mean? We're going to start the first book today. Let's start with the first one. The first one we have is Medical Apartheid. Medical Apartheid. The good sister Harriet A. Washington is the author of this masterpiece here. It's like a bestseller. Now, what I say is, don't talk to me if you haven't cracked that book open. Like I don't, it's a fruitless effort to try to have any kind of scholarly conversations with you if you hadn't done the research. And let me say this, research is always going to be your emotions. Your feelings don't trump facts. Always going to be facts over feelings. So, first book, Medical Apartheid. Got a little something I want to present to y'all. Let's hear from the good sister Harriet Washington. In her own words, okay? So let me represent to some and introduce to a lot of us. Harriet A. Washington, Medical Apartheid. Y'all check it out.
Miss Harriet Washington. I'm a writer, medical ethicist. I wrote a book entitled Medical Apartheid, which was the first comprehensive social history of research with African Americans. And it dealt with not only history of medicine, but also with social ills, racism, and a lot of my work has also focused on the intersection of ethics, history, and race in this country as it pertains to medical practices. It's a special interest of mine. I also do some teaching. I teach a bioethics course at Columbia University and lecture widely in this country and abroad about medical ethics issues, everything from conspiracy theories to the erosion of informed consent. And I find a great deal to keep me occupied. I was very happy to be invited back to EVMS. I lecture at many medical schools and institutions across the country, but this one always stayed in my mind. I had especially warm memories of it, and I find it a really exciting place because of the progress and the focus on issues of medicine and medical practice and medical care that go beyond the clinical classwork and the clinical issues. The issues are embedded in our society, and they dramatically affect how people's health waxes and wanes. And this is a school, an institution that has always taken this to heart, has always understood that one can't treat people in isolation in a clinic or in a hospital bed, that the entire person has to be addressed, and that means addressing some unfortunate aspects of our society. And anyway, it's always had a special place in my heart, and I'm very happy to be back here. It's hard to know what first piqued my interest in looking at the history of ethics as it pertained to African Americans and their treatment by the medical institutions in this country. But I know that my initial desire to be a physician and working in hospitals for over 10 years certainly sharpened that interest. I saw many things that troubled me and disturbed me, many questions I had about the interactions between individual patients and clinicians. And I actually found that clinicians were often very open about discussing with me their own trepidation about the way they felt constrained to treat patients. But it was a really interesting experience I had that I recount in Medical Apartheid when I was running a poison control center in a hospital in upstate New York. We were allowed to have extra space that was seated to us by radiology. And I also found an old file cabinet that I knew I could use in my office. So I'm opening this file cabinet, cleaning it out, and I found all these old filed folders of patients that had been forgotten. And being who I am, I read every last one of them, of course. And I was struck by the fact that these were patients who were being considered for kidney transplantation. But their files looked different, and the differences seemed to be assorted according to race. The files of the black patients were very thin, and those of the white patients were fatter. It's because the ones of the white patients had reams and reams of documentation about their social history, positive, they had positive support from family and friends, about their insurance that made them able to pay for this kind of procedure, and bolstering their claim, for a new kidney, called the social profile. The social profiles of the other patients, the black ones, everyone had the word Negro stamped on it. And they were thinner. Although, in particular, I saw one file where a gentleman who had insurance, had a loving family like the other patients, and yet the plan for this patient was not to help him find an organ, but to help him prepare for his imminent demise. And I thought, is it race that's separating these patients from a kidney that they need to live? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But it certainly looked suspicious, and I had to know more. And I think that triggered my interest. After that, I began looking everywhere to see whether or not black and white patients were being treated equally with the same access to life-saving technologies. And dismayingly often, I saw that they were not. I wasn't a writer then. That's the interesting thing. I was running a poison control center, but when I became a writer, I knew it would be the first book that I felt passionately about, and it was. After I had the opportunity to train in medical ethics, I spent 2.5 years training in medical ethics, and one of the questions I had was that there was one study, and seemingly only one study, that was acknowledged and well-known and many people, in which African Americans were mistreated, and that was a Tuskegee study. But I had already learned from my own curiosity, my own research, that there had been many, many studies, many of them, in fact most of them, much worse than Tuskegee. Studies in which African Americans were actively harmed, killed even, and I wondered why Tuskegee had such root in the American psyche, and I quickly realized it's because that's all people know about. Very often I would ask people.
That's a good place to stop right there. It's a good place to pause and interject just real quick. Don't let this go over your head, good people. Like don't miss what the sister is saying right here. She's saying that there was more than just Tuskegee experiment. We reference Tuskegee because that's the only one we know of. Don't let that go over your head, good people. Alright? We're going to raise the collective consciousness in our community. Right? It's the only way we can play the game if we know the rules. Alright, I just want to interject that really quick. Let's get back to the good sister.
About research with African Americans, clinical people, historians, people who should know, and they would only say Tuskegee. You're asking about Tuskegee, right? I'm like, no, I'm asking about everything else. I realized people did not know this history at all. And I went to international conference in Lubeck, Germany, of historians of medicine focused on medical experimentation in the 20th century. And they all said that only Tuskegee had harmed African Americans. I knew that wasn't true. So I began realizing the consequences of not understanding that there had been scores and scores of abusive medical research with African Americans over the decades. The consequences are that very often Tuskegee was dismissed as a terrible thing that happened, but it was accorded, the fears of African Americans to engage in medical research were accorded to Tuskegee. Well, they don't want to engage in medical research because they're overreacting to Tuskegee. It was called an overreaction to a single study, and I knew that wasn't true. I knew that people were actually reacting to centuries of abuse, and I thought it was really important to document that because nobody else had. When I went to the medical libraries in Europe and in the US, prestigious organizations like Harvard's Countley Library, you would find shelves filled with abuses toward whites and other groups, but nothing on the abuse of African Americans, nothing in books. But when I went to the basement and looked at the medical journals from the 18th, 19th century, I saw plenty there, but it was episodic. And I thought someone needs to pull this together so that people will understand that there's an entire canon of abusive research with African Americans. So people will stop dismissing it as a myth when these were actually all too real. And that's what I did.
Let me interject. A devil will look you right in your face and tell you a blatant lie. Let me say it again, make some of y'all slow. The devil will look you right in your eye and tell you a blatant lie. Did y'all catch that? Did y'all catch that? About how all of these prestigious institutions play as if they don't understand why Black Americans are skeptical of the medical society. With the history that foundational Black Americans have in this country, dehumanized during chattel slavery in this country, dehumanized. And we want to pretend as if we do not understand the skepticism of Black people and medicine. Let's keep going, man. The question says, what other abuses does your book detail that took place after the Tuskegee experience? So there was more that happened. Yeah, it was. Let's go.
You know, it would have been good if I could have said the book ended with Tuskegee, that we had learned everything that we should have learned, but we didn't at all. So what's happened is that we have many, many abuses after Tuskegee, at least as many after Tuskegee as beforehand. And there is not a sphere of American medicine that has gone untouched. Radiation experiments, experiments with children, reproductive abuse in experimentation. It's everywhere. Any sphere in which there's an interaction of African Americans with the system, you're going to find they're abused by the system. And in research settings, it was even more prevalent because in research settings, unlike therapeutic settings, there's a laissez-faire attitude often reigned. The interesting thing is that today we comfort ourselves that we have this matrix of laws that protect research subjects, and we do. That's a good thing. But laws are only as good as the people who enforce them and adhere to them. And all too often the laws are not being adhered to, and even more often we are passing laws now that actually erode informed consent, that reduce people's right to say yes or no in medical research. And when we do that, African Americans are often the most frequent victims of that. So unfortunately, although we do not engage in the most horrific physical abuses of the 18th and 19th centuries, we still do have many, many research studies that are ethically problematic and frankly abusive. So we still have not learned everything that we should have. The most valuable takeaway for students is to understand that they are the people with the least power and the most to lose by implicitly or explicitly criticizing the system, criticizing their professors, criticizing the way medicine is performed. And yet it's absolutely critical that they have the courage to speak up if they think they see something wrong. There are several reasons for that. One reason is that medical students have, in my opinion, a privileged perspective. They're still not completely socialized as doctors. So they still are able to see things from a layperson's point of view. And frankly, most doctors lose that eventually. It's part of the training. And it's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you're socialized into a profession, and you gain, frankly, so much more. But as medical students, you still have both worlds. You know, you're training as a physician, you have that perspective, but you can still see things from a layperson's perspective. Sometimes only you can see that something is wrong. Sometimes only you can be sensitive enough to understand that something can be abusive. And it's critically important to speak up, even though it's risky, even though it might cost you something, because you may be the only one seeing this wrong, and you may even be successful. You may even convince your attendings, your superiors, your colleagues that they need to reevaluate a practice or reevaluate a stance. So in that way, you can, and students have been, extremely important in advancing ethical thinking in medicine. I'm thinking, for example, of a group of London students. When I was studying medical ethics, in London there were a few students who were being asked to do, as students had been asked to do for decades before them, you're going to learn to do a pelvic examination by practicing on this unconscious woman. She's been prepped for another surgery, she's unconscious, now's your chance, learn how to do a pelvic. And some students said, no, I don't want to do this. She hasn't given her permission. She's not awake, which means if I don't know what I'm doing, should I hurt her, she can't even tell me. It's wrong. They convinced their attending, they convinced people in their hospital. That hospital stopped allowing this practice. Other hospitals fell suit, and in this country, some hospitals also no longer allow this. So their vision actually changed the practice of medicine, and that's the most important thing I have to say to the medical students. I had hoped when I wrote this book that it would inspire other people, especially historians of medicine, to write about some of the issues that I addressed. I hoped, it had been my dream, that this would actually be viewed as a new, become a new canon in the history of medicine, that people would explore this history. And I've seen that happen. There's now been a book published on I did a chapter on the fate of African Americans immediately around the time of the Civil War. And there's been a book published on that very subject. I did a section of the book where I talked about the government's propensity for supporting psychiatrists who are looking into a connection between violence and race. And Jonathan Metzl, wrote a book, The Protest Psychosis, that deals exactly with that. So I'm seeing more and more. Very recently, the New York Times has started a brilliant new series, 1619, to commemorate 400 years since Africans first set foot on the continent. And in this series, the first session of the series, I'm reading it, and I felt like I was reading my book. I mean, the story of John Brown, which I tell in my book, is there. The story about the vaccination by Onesimus. I mean, all these things I had written in my book 12 years earlier are now in the New York Times, and everyone's reading them. And that's made me very happy. That's what I want to see. I want to see more and more people delve into this history, and more importantly, what this history can tell us about what's going on today, how we can interpret events today in the light of our history to understand and hopefully not repeat the mechanisms that bring them to bear. Since I wrote Medical Apartheid, I've written several other books, and one of them had to do with the pharmaceutical industry and its commercialization of medicine and medical research. But I've been focusing more lately on cognitive effects of medical, injuries. I wrote a book called Infectious Madness where I talked about pathogens and their role in mental disease. And a very recently published book is about environmental toxicity, environmental racism, and its cognitive effects. I mean, we all know that lead causes brain damage. We all know that heavy metals like mercury and arsenic also do that. But I write about the fact that pathogens, pesticides, even banned pesticides, and PCBs and industrial chemicals all take their toll on human minds. And environmental racism means that they're taking a greater toll on people of color than they are on whites, and all that means. So I started by talking about intelligence, IQ testing, what it really means, what it really tests, and then I go on to explain and document how exposure to all these noxious chemicals and pathogens is affecting our intelligence, our collective intelligence, but is disproportionately victimizing African Americans. So that's my current obsession.
Man, that's so cool. That was so cool. That was a good sister, Harriet A. Washington. Medical apartheid. And I felt like it was very important to allow that good sister to speak and to allow the community, to hear her words, hear her perspectives on her motivations behind authoring such a piece of work as medical apartheid. And I'm gonna say this again, don't read this book if you're not serious, man. This is for the scholars in the community. You know what I mean? Like, we're dealing with complex subject matter. This is the type of information that's going to prevent us from making past mistakes in the future. Now, I'm suggesting ages, like I said, the advanced middle schoolers, advanced 7th, 8th graders, on up into adulthood. This is going to be one of the books, man. Let's put this on the reading list, the summer reading list. Let's do that. Okay? That's one now. I got another one coming up. Let's check this one out. Okay, right back at it. Let's go with the next one. Let's do one more. Let's do Stolen Legacy. Stolen Legacy. George G.M. James. I got that. Stolen Legacy by the good brother George G.M. James. So what I want to say about this. Let me do some of this real quick. That's the good brother, Dr. George G.M. James. Good brother. This is the brother that brought us the information about how we often hear a lot about one of the first great European powers was the Greek civilization. Brother George G.M. James is the one that let us know that a lot of the so-called great Greek philosophy was actually stolen from Egypt. They got their knowledge from Egypt. after they conquered Egypt. Yeah, so we're talking about strengthening the collective consciousness in the community. This is another good book that's gonna help you build a foundation. And I think Brother James kind of documents, a lot of the conquests of the Greeks. You got to talk about colonization. We hear that word a lot. I don't think we truly understand it. You know what I'm saying? Colonization is terrible. They're justified by saying, it's happened numerous times throughout history. As if that makes it any better. It doesn't. Colonization is, my God is greater than your God. Essentially. Yeah, I don't have any audio of the good brother speaking on his creation. Regretfully, I don't have any audio. But this is definitely one we want to add to the summer reader list. We talking about from middle school on up to adulthood. It's another good. Add this one to the collection, man. Now what we're gonna do is we can create a book club, or, you know what I'm saying, Q&A answer type deal, Once y'all get these pieces, y'all reach out, let me know. Let's get some engagement going. You know what I'm saying? Let's have some discussions in the community. You know what I'm saying? Fire it up in the comment section. You know what I'm saying? I got you 2 books this evening. I got a few more. We're going to bring it to the discussion a little later. Or we'll just flash it real quick. Got it. That'll be the next one. That'll be another one. That's what I can get my hands on right now. Dig? But like I said, man, we're gonna do something different in the community. You dig what I'm saying? We're about elevate. So man, Regal, happy birthday to me once again. Happy birthday to me. Like I said, we're finna get in traffic. But I got a few more videos that I'm working on to get uploaded to y'all today. I'm gonna try to flood the timeline with me. Happy birthday to me. It's your man Regal. I'm out of here, y'all. Until the next one. Peace.